Hi everyone. So this is Abhishek Banerjee. I'm the founder at Lotusdew Wealth. Um, Thanks for making time in the weekend, especially on a Sunday, to listen to this. But today we are going to talk about something which is profound, which is about how will India, right, and Indians make money in 10 years. Which is important to understand this because out of this, the broad idea of this particular aspect of investing, many themes will emerge, and out of these themes, you can do stock selection. So the idea for this webinar is to give you a global macro understanding of where is India currently positioned, how is Indians earning, and then derive uh, themes yourself to understand where you can go ahead and invest, and eventually with the right tools or the right advice, you can get the stocks that you would like to fill into these themes. So yes, just because we are starting and maybe there are some new people who have decided to spend their time with me today. Lotus Dew is a SEBI registered investment advisor. We are based out of Hyderabad, and we basically apply artificial intelligence in screening stocks, especially in the small and micro cap category. We have three main ways of doing that. We score corporate governance of companies using board composition. We apply deep learning on equity prices to basically clean out equity prices from noise. And then we, of course, track investment behavior using regulatory disclosures across multiple countries to understand how dominant bets are getting played out. So basically, following smart money, right? So these are the three main ideas. Today, we are going to talk mainly about India, the country that is everybody's wonder today because of few things that we'll cover, and then how will the people who live in India, how will they make money, right? How will people like you and I who are living in India, and if this story is true, how is that we can benefit from this? So let's dive right in and kind of start. The first thing we have to understand is government is across the countries and across the world. The trend for the next 10 years is that government spending and governments will become more and more important in the economic uh, kind of way of spending. Where is this coming from, and what was it before like, right? So there are these swings of pendulum where there is regulation and deregulation and back to regulation and back to deregulation. What we have to understand is that governments have a lot of power in deciding the direction of the economy, and that is just the fact, right? They of course work in balance with other foreign economies, their own strategic interest, their defense interest, their constraints in terms of what they're able to do. But in general, the governments want to control more and more of the economy because they feel that that would give them ability to direct the nation in a direction that the government thinks is beneficial for the existence and national interest. So that is what governments are, irrespective of which country it is. But what what constraints they have to undergo is how much of borrowing can they do, how much of tax collection do they have, how much of pushback they get from other countries in terms of what they're producing that has to be sold in other countries, so that's tariffs. So these are the constraints under which a government works. But in the case of India, there are certain very interesting things. First, if you look at the government capex, right, it has increased almost 5x in the last, not even 10 years, it's about 8 years, which means that they are spending five times more than they used to, which means companies that benefit from this capex are the companies that are going to get orders, they're going to get retained earnings, they're going to basically become more and more valuable as a company. So that's point number one. Point number two is, where is this capex coming from, right? Who is giving money to the government to do this kind of capex? Is people, we are giving the money. So our tax collection, both from corporates and direct taxes, have increased. And therefore, that means that uh, our ability to fund government by tax compliance is only going to accelerate from here. So two main vectors that are very important to understand कि एक तो है कि गवर्नमेंट के पास ज्यादा पैसा खर्च करने के लिए ऑप्शन है और कर भी रही है गवर्नमेंट ज्यादा. सो इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट टू नो दैट जब गवर्नमेंट के पास ज्यादा पैसा होती है कहाँ पे उसका फोकस कहाँ पे है, क्यों है ये फोकस और कितना कंटिन्यूटी है ये फोकस में. सो इसीलिए इलेक्शन इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं बिकॉज इन द टाइम ऑफ इलेक्शन you decide policy continuity. If the same government and the same ministers are back in the seat, that means whatever they were thinking and saying more or less utna hi hoga. So that is the reason why markets take a pause before election and then they price in this change. And in this case, there was no change. So basically, it's business as usual for the government and the policy. So यहाँ पे हम लोग के पास ऑप्शन है कि गवर्नमेंट के पास ज्यादा पैसा आ रही है, दे आर एबल टू अर्न मोर मनी. They have not even tapped into external commercial borrowing seriously because Indian government bonds are not part of the large bond indices, and there are a lot of constraints in terms of capital accounting as to how investors can come and fund government borrowing in India. So ये lever तो उसने use ही नहीं किया है. Corporate tax, collection is increasing, direct tax is increasing, and capex का intent is increasing. So ये mix है, ये broad global macro mix है. इसमें हम लोग थोड़ा थोड़ा करके we'll would layer by layer deeper to understand कि कहाँ तक हम लोग इसको trace कर पाते हैं, till where can we trace the benefits of this, right? So that's going to be the rest of the slides. फर्स्ट है कि हम लोग ने कुछ चीजें ऑलरेडी देख ली आफ्टर इलेक्शन. फर्स्ट इज फॉर एग्जांपल एक recently news आया था कि कोल इंडिया इज गोइंग इनटू माइनिंग ऑफ लिथियम इन साउथ अमेरिका. सो वी हैव टू आल्सो अंडरस्टैंड दैट कंपनी लाइक कोल इंडिया, ये तो पता है कि कोल is a non-renewable asset and the world is moving away from coal, but as a company they have the knowledge to mine, right? So if they mine, they can mine coal, they can mine xyz, but the point here is that a traditional company with the knowledge of and the tools and the machinery can go to a new sector, and we have to track that. I'm not saying coal india is the best lithium mining company in the world, so we should invest. I'm just giving you an example of how things are changing. Second, first thing government ने क्या किया कि 1 gigawatt offshore wind farm in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. India peak power demand this year was about 86 gigawatts, so it's 1 by 86 of the demand. But let's say that this can only accelerate in 15-20 years. We will reach 60-70% of our energy demand coming from renewables. That includes hydrogen, wind, solar. So ये सब चीजें होने वाली है. Third is ये government जब spend कर रही है, apart from these kind of greening of the energy consumption, there are other important parts where they're spending on fertilizer subsidy, capex for solar homes. There will eventually be a universal basic income. Now we, as let's say higher than average earning citizens of India, the fact that our taxes are used for subsidies just means that you cannot claim back that tax. The only good thing you can do is ensure that whatever money you're left with after taxes, you're investing in companies that will benefit from this spend of your tax money, right? So that is the way to recapture back the taxes that you pay. It's not by complaining about taxes. That's never going to change as such. Across the world, if you see, taxes have always been a contentious point with the citizens and the government. It is just the way it is. There are better ways to deal with it, right, as an investor. So let's look at exactly how will the government spend. कहाँ कहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट का इम्पैक्ट आ सकता है. सम एग्जाम्पल कंपनीज, अगेन ये इन्वेस्टमेंट एनालिसिस नहीं है, ये एग्जाम्पल्स देने के लिए कि आपको एक चीज कॉन्क्रीट दिखे कि कैसे ये हो रहा है एंड कौन बेनिफिट कर सकता है. तो एग्रीकल्चर, राइट, इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज हम लोग का पॉपुलेशन को फीड करने के लिए एंड स्पेशली if you look at climate change, different countries are facing different kinds of climate change issues. So where the majority of food production will happen is still something which has to be dealt with. And our agricultural efficiency is very low. Matlab, hum log, we are dependent on fractional farmers. Our ability to fund those farmers with machinery and manure and seeds and better technology is only improving day by day. So the efficiency of agriculture has to improve. This includes fisheries. This includes normal staple crops. This includes corn or sugarcane for biodiesel mixture. So there's a lot of agri focus where India can do a lot better. Uh, Fertilizers is one area which is high impact because people go get fertilizers and then put it in the crop and the crop grows well. So दिखता ज़्यादा है. Hence, therefore, that is one area. Energy, fuels, electricity tax break. India wants to become the data center hub. India wants to become the EV hub. Both these things require more electricity. Now, somewhere, somehow, we have to produce this electricity. Not only produce it, these have to be distributed. कि मतलब कोई एक मतलब मान लीजिए कि नॉर्थ ईस्ट में कोई डेटा सेंटर बना रहा है, उसको सब्सिडी मिल रही है कि आप यहाँ पे जमीन लीजिए, बड़ा सा डेटा सेंटर बनाइए, लैंड इज फॉर फ्री, आप जॉब्स दीजिए. तो वहां तक एनर्जी तो पहुंचाना पड़ेगा ना, एंड स्टेबल एनर्जी, या फिर वहां पे सोलर प्लांट लगाना पड़ेगा. सो दीज काइंड ऑफ डायनेमिक्स आर गोना प्ले आउट. एंड द पॉइंट हियर इज दैट we have to anticipate. And जहाँ पे there's a classic statement, जो मतलब आप मान लीजिए आप फुटबॉल खेलते हैं, so you cannot run towards where the football is, right? You have to run towards where the football is going to be, right? So especially if you're in a fan of cricket, when the you're running towards where you anticipate the ball is going to be by the time you reach there. So that is the main point also in investing. You cannot invest looking at what you see, but you have to invest looking at anticipating. And you might be wrong totally, but you have to anticipate. You cannot do it based on the present fact, because that's already more or less priced in, right? There might be some dislocations, but more or less it is priced in. So हम लोग मोटा मोटा देख लिए कि यहाँ पे हम लोग these are the levers. So what will India make out of this, right? And who will buy it? कौन खरीदेगा? So we can make some concrete examples, जैसे roads, rails, bridges, ports. Government agencies will buy. Construction companies will buy this. Private public partnerships will happen. Defense बहुत तेजी से भाग रहे हैं. Of course, there is a lot of demand for indigenization, कि हम लोग खुद के weapons खुद बनाएं, खुद का drones खुद बनाएं, UAVs or sort of like unmanned aerial vehicles for defense and surveillance. We make it on our own. We want to make complex electronic systems in India for the benefit of Indian defense and of course consumers. So that still remains an important vector. Power infrastructure, like I said, power generation and power distribution both have to go hand in hand. And government departments have to become more efficient in ensuring that power distribution is leak free and they are able to distribute this power to the end consumers. Affordable housing is very important. No country has emerged from a emerging country into a developed country without providing proper housing to its citizens. Point. ये आप your tax money will be used to make houses for people who cannot afford it, and that is very important for your ultimate per capita income growth, where once these people have mental bandwidth so that they know that they have a stable house, they become more productive. When they become more productive, they contribute towards the economy, and if you're invested in the economy, you benefit out of it, right? So it is very important for a country like India to provide housing to its citizens so that there is organized society which is living in sort of like a not on the streets, right? And it is a very important aspect of becoming a developed country, and this will happen. We of course want to make data centers. We have the best engineers in the world. Talent is not a constraint. The constraint is the fact that who is going to do the capex, right? and we are already seeing some of the first generation entrepreneurs who have had successful exit go back and invest in these kind of technologies. So this is going to be a theme that we should definitely consider in the overall allocation. And consumer durables, what is a luxury 10 years ago becomes a necessity today, right? So आप मान लीजिए कि very simply, things like refrigerator, things like air conditioner, things like a flat screen TV, things like a mobile phone. पहले कितने लोगों के पास रहते थे, अभी कितने लोगों के पास है? So there is always, whatever is a discretionary item becomes a staple item. So that trend, right, is contributed by lowering of prices as well as penetration of that product across multiple geographies. So that is something which we will see. On all of these, you can apply few policies like PLI, you can apply subsidies, you can apply regulations, you can apply lowering of interest rate, but broadly these are the buckets. Okay, so the question is, ठीक है, अभी मतलब this is fine, but what to expect from the budget? Is there going to be certain things that we as tax-paying citizens who are also in the markets can likely benefit from? So yeah, I mean, there we do expect certain adjustments in the slabs and so on, but उतना कुछ खास फर्क होने वाला है नहीं. I think if you're waiting for the budget to invest, there's always going to be a next event. Budget के बाद बिहार इलेक्शन है, उसके पहले दिवाली का कंज्यूमर डिमांड का प्रोजेक्शन है, मॉनसून कैसा होगा. So there is always something which is going to be sort of a key moment which markets are waiting for. But overall markets climb a wall of worry, right? अगर कुछ worry करने के लिए नहीं है तो markets वहीं पे रुक जाएगी. There are some people who worry less and some people who worry more, and if the general economic trend is up, then they climb the wall of worry. So आपको वही anticipate करना है कि आप every now and then there'll be an event, so you cannot really wait for an event to play out before you decide. So it is important that you have your own thesis beyond the events, right? If it's a big event, matlab कि चलो, it's like the election was indeed a big event, so people took a pause and that's fine. But ये छोटे मोटे बजट आनी है, मॉनसून का डेटा आना है, ये वो सब, these get event out over a long term. If you're a long term investor, of course, if you're a trader, these things matter much more. But that is something for you to decide कि आप खुद को ट्रेडर मानते हो या इन्वेस्टर मानते हो. So in that case, we'll see new tax regime में थोड़े adjustments होंगे. Old tax regime में जैसे real estate को boost देने के लिए they might increase the exemption limit. अभी 50 लाख में कौन सी सिटी में कैसा घर मिलता है? Like if you even if you build your own house in a plot of land in a city like Hyderabad, जहाँ पे हम लोग रहते हैं, तो वहाँ पे 100 गज की जमीन ही मतलब 50 लाख की मिलती है. तो अभी उसके ऊपर आप घर बनाएंगे 10 15 20 लाख का, तो मिनिमम जैसे कोई घर बनाना चाहता है तो उसको 25 30 लाख तो चाहिए बनाने के लिए घर, राइट? सो अगर किसी को फ्लैट चाहिए तो 50 लाख का वाला फ्लैट बहुत दूर का मिलता है. सो व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट पीपल हु आर let's say in the middle class category, for them 50 lakh is already too low for interest subsidies. Maybe those things will get increased in line with the actual market prices. And then finally, there's certain economic goals. India wants to become a larger economy. Pre-budget consultation kar rahi hai government. They're trying to get feedback, how to land. More importantly, JP Morgan, which is a global bank, they run an index for government bonds, so that will India will get included in that. So ये सब चीजें हो रही है, and in this global macro context, टैक्स के रिलेटेड जो भी चेंजेस होंगे बजट में छोटे मोटे ही होंगे. लाइक सो वी शुड नॉट रियली थिंक टू मच कि इससे कुछ ज्यादा फर्क आने वाला है. some people will be happy, some people will be disappointed, but broadly the changes will not be that dramatic, is what I see. uh, so when so we covered, let's go back to the trail. एक तो we made a point that government spending is key. We then said that okay, subsidies कैसे कैसे use होंगे, कहाँ पे subsidies government spends impact करने वाली है, right? And then we went into some of the thematic buckets, and then we said, given that these thematic buckets, what is the uh, how do we interpret the budget, which is the next event that people are waiting for. But let's also talk about all the risks that you onboard when you are an investor. It's not just one risk, right? It's many risks. So for example, systematic risk, which is the general direction of the market ऊपर जा रही है, नीचे जा रही है, so इसको आप hedge कर सकते हैं. जैसे मान लीजिए आपको लग रहा है मार्केट नीचे जाने वाली, you can buy a put to your portfolio. Second is unsystematic. This is company specific. अगर आपको लगता है कि this particular company is going to do better than the other, you're making an unsystematic company specific risk bet. So that is where irrespective of the direction of the market, मान लीजिए if company is going to do better than other, if the market does 10%, this company can do 12%. So this 2% is your unsystematic risk. And what is risk? Risk is the unknown thing. Inflation risk, matlab how quickly can the company raise prices when the general price in the economy is increasing. Liquidity risk, how liquid is this particular company's traded volume. For example, Hamna, most of our products are small and micro cap stocks, so liquidity risk is high in our product, where there's not as liquid as the large cap companies, but still fairly liquid for retail investors to dive in and out. But it's something which you take as an investor. Business risk is essentially how, even if the things are going good now, the management can make a mistake and drive the business to ground. We have seen that with companies where the pedigree of the company was very good, but the company did not succeed because of business risk. Volatility risk, matlab how volatile is this journey for the stock, right? Some stocks are more volatile, some stocks are less volatile. It's just how much interest there is in the stock. And currency risk, like how is the main source of income coming from Indian rupee or from foreign currency. And if you're interested to learn more, do visit my YouTube channel where I'm talking about all these kind of risks, particularly especially for investors to understand like what are the different kind of risks and how to deal with it. But we are long-term investors, so that is something which is very fundamental to stock market investors, right? So आप हम दोनों सब long term investors है, हम लोग trader नहीं है. तो हम लोग इसमें what should we kind of do? So we have our own long term strategy as a basket. We focus on four main things, right? We are saying कि हम लोग को volatility नहीं चाहिए. We don't like volatility, so anything that is volatile is not something which we find attractive. Second is we want to stand on the shoulders of giants. So we want to ensure that जो भी हम लोग stocks पे invest कर रहे हैं, there is institutional backing. इसका मतलब क्या है कि अगर हम लोग मान लीजिए not only me or not only you, others are also watching that stock. So if there is something going wrong, there is a lot of eyes on that ball. So if you have moved your eyes away from the ball, somebody else is watching, and the price action will kind of trigger you to look at it again if something is going beyond what your expectations are, both up and down, right? Not just down, both up and down. The second is they have to be well managed. मतलब इसका, and the board has to be effective and credible. इसका मतलब है कि आपका ship अच्छा भी है, अगर वो crew अच्छा नहीं है, तो the ship will run aground. And we have seen like so many cruise ships run aground. It is not the fault of the ship. The ship was perfectly capable of sailing, but something happened. They did not maintain it well. There was a breakdown, or they didn't steer it well. So there is ship runs aground. So well run management is important, and quality of top line and bottom line. इसका मतलब क्या है कि how consistent are you? Investing में हम लोग risk ले रहे हैं. ये risky universe में जो भी consistency दिखाता है उसको हम ज़्यादा reward करते हैं. That is a fact. So when in an uncertain basket, right, in an uncertain economy, we don't know tomorrow, which policy will work out, which company will work out, which management will work out. किसी को नहीं पता. I mean, we are all making hypothetical guesses using our knowledge and trying to anticipate. But यही environment में कोई consistently कुछ कर रहा है, तो उसका मतलब है they are able to do something better than others, and therefore consistency of the top line and bottom line is a very good indicator of a well managed company. And hence that is a factor that we also focus on a lot कि आप consistency देखिए. मतलब you can look at consistency of operating margin, you can look at consistency of tax payment, You can look at consistency of sales growth. You can look at consistency of, for example, the cash conversion cycle. So there are many things you can look at, which is difficult to manage विदाउट बीइंग कंसिस्टेंटली वेल. सो वो चीज आपको मेन चीज देखनी है कि जो भी आप देख रहे हैं कंपनी के बारे में वो कितना कंसिस्टेंट है. therefore we do not find it very easy to, or we don't even do it with, in terms of turnaround stories, because turnaround may maybe the company management will turn it around and be extremely successful, but that is a very internal matter of the company and how they are doing it. And we as minority investors trying to anticipate that is way harder than trying to anticipate consistency, given that there is a track record of consistency, right? So therefore, to reduce the risk in the portfolio, we stay away from turnaround stories, and we are more interested in consistent, solid companies that have institutional backing and exhibit low volatility. So agar ye cheez hai, like, is it very easy? Like, can somebody, like, with a little bit of time, tackle this universe? The answer is unfortunately no. And the reason really is that we did this analysis ki how how can you kind of look at the universe of small caps, right? There are roughly 14-1500 companies which are liquid enough to be used in a portfolio. Baki to है listed, but uska koi liquidity nahi hai kuch, there's very small companies, so it's basically not there, it's absent. So the surprising is that in 5 years 1 in 7 companies got delisted, right? So if you're thinking that I'll just buy a company and be a long-term investor randomly, the chances are that 14% of your portfolio will never be listed by the time you finish 5 years. तो आपको तो वैसे ही 14% zero हो गया. अब बाकी रहा बाकी companies का. So roughly 30% will give you 2x returns, and 2 to 3x is 128 companies. We did this analysis to see like exactly what are the chances, right? We are talking about random chances, right? I'm not talking about informed chances. Random chances में क्या possibility है succeed करने के लिए, and is this a universe that is amenable to, let's say, concentration risk, is amenable to things like getting advice, or doing a basic research. So you have to follow some framework, you have to follow some guidance, or you have to study well. We have access to a lot of data providers, let's say Thomson Reuters ho gaya, Refinitiv. These are very expensive data sets. We spend lakhs a month to get this data, but our job is to kind of take this data in wholesale and then do the analysis and give it piecemeal to our investors, so that they do not fall into these traps of getting delisted. They do not fall into the trap of getting lower than cost returns, right? So if you look at 30% of the universe, so if you add the delisted, and आपका 50% of the universe तो cost के नीचे है, right? So 5 साल में अगर आप randomly 20 company भी लेता हो, you will hardly even cross the fixed deposit return. So the question, therefore, it's a very tricky universe, and in this tricky universe you have to be extremely careful, especially because in the small cap space, and you have to stick to somebody who you believe, let's say like a company that you have personally analyzed and researched quite well. Otherwise you're exposed to this kind of risk. So in our long-term strategy, which I will talk about in a moment, what are we really doing? We want minimal turnover in this strategy. It's like the lowest maintenance. One of the things that we have seen, I keep talking to many of the customers who are associated with me on small case. One of the things that is they find hassling is too many updates coming from the coming from the managers. So they want a little bit of peaceful portfolio ki bhai, I don't have that much bandwidth, so let me just buy something, and somebody is watching, I don't mind doing it couple of times a year, but daily mere paas time nahi hai. I'm not an active market trader. So for those people who want to have a peaceful life in their own life, and just do investments through the buy and hold strategy, this is ideal for them. And we of course track, one of the key things, we have a large technology team, and we have built a lot of technology which tracks बिहेवियरल चेंजेस ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स ग्लोबली, मतलब इसका मतलब है कि हम लोग कोशिश करते हैं कि ग्लोबली 8,000 इन्वेस्टर्स को हम लोग ट्रैक करते हैं जिसके रेगुलेटरी डिस्क्लोजर्स उनके जुरिस्डिक्शन में आते हैं, जैसे सेबी के आते हैं, एफएसए के आते हैं, एसईसी के आते हैं। सो वी ट्रैक कि उन लोग ने पैसे कैसे मूव किए एंड वो क्यों मूव किए, तो उसको ट्रैक करने के बाद उसको एसिमुलेट करके हम लोग एक सिक्योरिटी लेवल पे डेटा निकालते हैं कि वेयर इज द डोमिनेंट बेट, मतलब डोमिनेटिंग स्ट्रेटेजी क्या है, और उसको हम लोग ट्राई करते हैं कि वो डोमिनेंट बेट को हम लोग प्रॉपरली एनालाइज करें कि उसका फंडामेंटल रीजन क्या है, राइट। एंड देन वी वांट इंस्टीट्यूशनल फोकस, वी वांट टू दिस टू बी अ कोर स्मॉल कैप रिप्लेसमेंट। ऐसे there are some good small cap mutual funds, but they are unfortunately closed. And we do think that for and they're closed for the right reasons, because but if you're a educated person who can handle a online terminal, I think this kind of this can possibly look as an alternative to your core small cap allocation. But of course, you have to understand this very well. You have to make sure that you understand the risk involved in doing so, right? And then this is the strategy, which is the Lotusdew long-term strategy. We will not change anything in this portfolio that much. Uh, so basically, like typically SEBI allows us to only charge up to 6 months of advisory fee in advance, but I think we will not even change anything in this particular stock for a year unless there is a particular event in a company, which is what we don't exactly expect. So it's for this is a strategy where you just want to stay invested for the long term, and without spending too much time trying to pick stocks and deal with changes to the portfolio. So this could be something which you can look at. With that, I think I will go back to the questions now. So I have some questions which has been sent to me, and Jasmeet is saying that government expect private players to increase spending as government cannot sustain high infra spend. No, government can, just mean government can sustain very high infra spend. See, the fact of the matter is the government companies are doing better than private companies. Why? Because private companies are transitioning from the old way of doing business to new way of doing business. The cost of compliance has increased. The general cost of private companies have increased, and therefore the profitability is lower. Which so compared to that, private companies were always run more efficiently than public companies, right? And if the cost is increasing, public companies are at an advantage because there's a lot of headroom for efficiency gain. जैसे अभी recently news आया कि आप अगर government employee हो, आप you're not showing up by 9:15, half days casual leave, right? So imagine, like what is the kind of PR a company like a IT services company would get if they impose such rules. So in such a case, like how would the general employee react if they say that no, you're mandated to come at 9:15, otherwise your half day is gone? Governments can do that. Private companies will find it much more challenging to implement such kind of ideas. So the efficiency gain that you can get from these kind of measures from public companies helps. Hence, the ability of government to collect taxes and make companies more efficient gives them an edge. That said, private companies have a different edge. Private companies can do things the governments have not thought of, right? So which means private companies can innovate faster than governments. तो आपको दो वेक्टर्स में लेने हैं, एक तो है कि एफिशिएंसी वाला वेक्टर, एक है इनोवेशन वाला वेक्टर। दोनों वेक्टर में आपको इन्वेस्टेड रहना है। दिस इज कॉल्ड बारबेल स्ट्रेटजी, वेयर यू आर बेसिकली एम्प्टिंग आउट फ्रॉम द मिडिल, लाइक पीपल हु हैव नॉट स्टिल मेड अप देयर माइंड कि क्या करना है, एफिशिएंसी करना है, इनोवेशन करना है। आप दोनों साइड के एकदम एक्सट्रीम में चले जाए, इनको सपोर्ट कीजिए बिकॉज दे आर एबल टू डू दैट properly. Next is Rahul Tiwari saying, how much CAGR should we expect from our mid small cap indices given the situation, kind of a little unstable government and war situation around the globe? So I will this is a question which gets asked most often कि return कितना आएगा, किसी को नहीं पता रिटर्न कितना आएगा। जो रिटर्न पहले आ चुका है वो आ चुका है, जो आगे आने वाला है वो आने वाला है। सो बट आई विल टेल यू हाउ टू कैसे आप एस्टिमेट कैसे कर सकते हो। हाँ, तो एक होता है कि ओवर 10 years nominal GDP. Nominal GDP मतलब real GDP plus inflation, and large cap के returns identical होते हैं. This has been the case ever since markets have existed. तो इंडिया में that number is 12%. So large cap return 11 to 12% आप मान के चलो. In the index, maybe the fund manager in a large cap fund will do 1-2% more, right? So you are basically looking at a 12% annualized return in large cap. Small caps, there's enough academic evidence that small caps give you a 3-4% more than that. So if you're a small cap investor, you get 12 plus 14, 16%. अगर अच्छा म्यूचुअल फंड हुआ तो 18%, right? So that's where your public vehicle, like sort of mutual fund stops in terms of the top end of the returns. उसके बाद आते हैं आपके जो स्पेशलाइज्ड होते हैं, जैसे मान लीजिए कंसंट्रेटेड PMSs हो गए या फोकस PMSs हो गए, they will give you net of all cost another 2-3%, right? So you're now looking at 20-21%. And then if you are doing something like a highly concentrated stock basket, things like that, you should get more than this. So you should be expecting about 25% to 50%, depending on how good the fund manager is in that regime of returns. This is the way to think about it. Hence, depending on how much risk you are able to take and how much return aspiration you have, you can look at this range of things. One thing you have to understand is risk is not just downside risk. Risk is also upside risk. मतलब आपने इन्वेस्ट नहीं किया तो वो भी अपॉर्चुनिटी तो गई ना. तो रिस्क इज नॉट कि मैंने प्रोटेक्ट कर लिया डाउनसाइड को, आपको अपसाइड भी कैप्चर करना है. तो दोनों आपके रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज है टू इंक्रीज योर वेल्थ. How should we see the IT sector from here, given the Fed doesn't seem to be in a mood of doing rate cut? That's a very good question. It's great that you have linked the IT sector with the Fed cut. इसका मैं explain करता हूँ कि क्यों ये लिंक है Fed के साथ IT sector का. जैसे वहाँ पे Fed क्या करी, यहाँ पे TCS का stock price move क्यों होगा? So when Fed is cutting rates, dollar will go down. When dollar goes down, profitability of the IT stocks will go down. Why? Because they invoice in dollars and they pay in rupees, right? So if dollar is weaker, they get less rupees as revenue and they have the same rupee cost, so the margin gets compressed. Similarly, if the Fed is raising rate, that means dollar is going to strengthen, and if dollar is going to strengthen, you get more rupees per dollar which you get in the Indian company, and you pay the same rupees as salary. So what Fed is doing has a direct link on IT stocks. There are two problems with IT stocks. First is there is no value accretion in the work, right? So IT companies are more and more focused on cost reduction rather than revenue generation, and going upstream in the revenue compared to like what the product companies of US are doing, like Nvidia, and so on. They are making products that the world wants, and we are making services that the world should buy. So we are that way structurally a little disadvantaged right now. Second is Fed. Obviously, the inflation is coming down, and if they cut, that's not going to be good for IT stocks in general. So my sense is that as a sector, there might be a couple of companies like which are focused on certain aspects, right? Whether it's automotives. There are companies that do IT services for automotives, automotive components. Those kind of companies might still be fine, but general broad IT services company, काफी challenge है, even now, right? And but in that basket also, if a company is doing more domestic services than foreign services, they are slightly better off, right? So that's the way to look at it. Hiran Shinde is asking view on metal sector. Metal sector we are very bullish on because it's very difficult to get new capacity on metal sector. So people who have established capacity, if you look at the mix of construction, how construction is changing, more and more metals will be used. More and more, right from window frames, पहले जो लकड़ी के बनते थे अभी लोहे के बनते, जो पहले ब्रिजेस कंक्रीट के बनते हैं वो लोहे के बनते. बिल्डिंग्स आप देख लीजिए, अभी बीम से बन रहे हैं बिल्डिंग्स इंस्टेड ऑफ मेकिंग इट फ्रॉम कंक्रीट. सो देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ डिमांड फॉर मेटल एंड metal stocks, especially base metal. We are bullish. We are also bullish on precious metals. Then recent run up in fertilizer stocks and view of the sector. I think my view is that governments will support fertilizer sector a lot, right? There is but people might be over anticipating what that means for profitability of the company. Let's understand that जैसे governments can mandate a price cap, like आप इतने में ही बेच सकते हो, we'll support you on scale but you cannot earn profit, anti profiteering जैसे हो गया, तो वैसे चीजें हो सकती है. And I think it's a priority sector, but it's also a risky sector in terms of, like, how important it is politically to control prices in that sector. So yeah, I mean, I'm actually not very confident that this particular sector is fraught from any risk, but yeah, it's definitely a sector of priority, and overall I think it should do well. Vamshi is asking, what's the budget effect on different sectors and investment decisions? So, frankly, no change, right? I think I'll watch the budget, but the budget is not what it used to be, right? Where things would move a lot. बजट इज की मतलब अभी उसका इंग्लिश मीनिंग भी अब समझ लीजिए, व्हाट इज अ बजट, मतलब ये मेरा इनकम है, ये ऐसे मैं स्पेंड करना चाहती हूँ, तो यही चीज बताने वाली है ना. तो ये ऐसे मैं इनकम करूंगी, ऐसे मैं स्पेंड करूंगी, दैट्स इट. सो पॉलिसी वाली चीज नहीं है ये. सो देयरफॉर आई डोंट think we will have to do too much changes post budget. Hence I think we should just do what we are doing as such. Many investors are waiting for sidelines for up to 30% crash, make investments based on the opportunity. See, I mean, firstly, if there is a 30% crash, the headlines will be so bad that it is very difficult to convince yourself that यही bottom है, अभी मेरे को पैसे डालने चाहिए. The 99% of the people will just stay away from the market. Okay, when the crash is happening, you won't be able to convince yourself that this is an opportunity when that crash of 37% happens. Like, मान लीजिए from now to 30%, it's a big deal, and when that is happening, it is almost like you will not even look at the markets because your portfolio will be underwater. You will not feel like logging into your trading account to see where the value is. That is normally human behavior. I think more money is lost waiting for the crash than actually in the crash, right? So my general sense is that, and advise also that you should stay invested in the market instead of timing the market, right? It's very difficult. कोई नहीं कर सकता. I mean, in a very short term, if you are like a high frequency trader or a momentum trader, you can do that. There's a concept of efficient market hypothesis and especially strong, semi-strong, and weak market hypothesis. Those are deep theoretical understanding of economics and market microstructure. But apart from that, broadly, these things, price alone has very little information in the long term. So therefore, you have to be cognizant of that. Uh, Several small cases of publishing allowing 12-month subscription. How does it work if SEBI allows only 6 months? See, for research analysts, there is no restriction. For investment advisors, it's very clear that you can only offer up to 6 months. So I can't comment more than that. You have to check the registration of the person who's offering to see if it's in line. Uh, because of, yeah, so I think somebody has already answered. And I would say that, broadly, if you want to take away a few things from this webinar, firstly, I would say that understand that government spending is the key, right? Follow the government. Second, I would say is subsidy is going to be a large part of spending. So follow the subsidies. Look at the second degree of impact, right? Remember that when you're playing, you're not running where, if you're playing football, you're not running where the person has the football, you're running towards the person he's likely to pass the football to, right? So you have to anticipate. If you, without anticipation, you cannot invest. If you are investing looking at the present, you're already too late. uh, these are some of the sectors we think we have identified. These are obviously not very difficult to anticipate. Like, most of you will understand this makes sense, but still there might be missing sectors that we have not thought of, or maybe a sector in this basket will actually not do well. So do your own research. Don't wait for the budget. Nothing dramatic is going to happen, in my opinion. Just focus on the long term journey of your investment, and then, yeah, be aware of all the risks, right? They're not just one risk, there's 7 kinds of risk. Please be aware of that risk. Make sure that you understand the risk before you invest. Investing without understanding is not going to be beneficial, because you will lose conviction. The moment you lose conviction, you will sell. So the point is, स्टॉक तो आपको कोई भी बता देगा, बट कन्विक्शन कौन देगा? कन्विक्शन देने के लिए आपको यू नीड टू फॉलो समथिंग, somebody, or some research that you own. So it is very important to stay convict, to have conviction in what you're doing. Otherwise, you're in and out of the market, and it's mostly like you've not really made money, right? So with conviction, you can build wealth, and therefore, long term look. These are some of the things that we look at. It's a tricky universe. Do not get swayed by as an easy way to make money. It's just tricky, therefore professionals are needed to kind of parse through this universe. And more than professionals, data is needed, right? We spend lakhs a month on data that we buy, and lakhs a month on the technology that we use to make the data that we cannot buy. So we are able to take that information and bring it to you as a curated basket, and hence we think that we might be able to do a service. That's why we are there. And therefore, what you can expect from the core strategy replacement in this Lotusdew long-term strategy is the fact that this is a very low maintenance portfolio, and if you desire a very high engaging portfolio, there are other things that other baskets. But if you're like, you just want a peaceful life with your basket and you don't want to be bothered, this might be a one something that you would want to look at in more detail, right? With that, I think we are coming towards the end of the webinar. Unless there are any other questions, I would like to thank everybody for having spent their Sunday with me. It's always nice to talk about markets. I keep saying that if I had all the money, I would still do the same thing, right? It's just my passion to apply technology and markets in one thing. And thank you so much for your time and attention. Hope to see you soon again, and have a nice weekend for the whatever is left. But do kind of share these kind of knowledge with your friends, so that they are also aware that, and they're as informed as you are, for you to help them as well. All right. Thanks for watching this educational webinar. Hope you had a good time. Bye, and have a nice weekend. Thank you.